All right, we are going to move into Christianity and spirituality. Now, before I get started on this, I want to clarify a couple things. Christianity is a religion or a faith practice, okay? I know that sounds a little bit strong, but really at its core, Christianity is just like Buddhism, Hinduism, Mormonism, all of those sorts of things, in that it is a faith practice or a religion. Christian faith, just like somebody who is a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Mormon or a Muslim, the Christian faith is going to be the primary influence on our spiritual practices. So, if you are a believer, it is very, very likely that the way that you conduct your life, the things that are important to you, the things you value, the things that you honor at the greatest and highest level are going to be very much in line with what the Christian faith says. Now, if you are a Buddhist, it's also very likely that the things that you value the most and honor to the highest and greatest degree are going to be in line with whatever the Buddhist faith is. So you see that Christianity and spirituality go hand in hand because our spirituality is based on some of those principles, or how we live out our spirituality is based on some of the principles that we live in a faith sense, okay? So, what I think is really important to recognize in this is that other religions or faiths are spiritual also. They have those spiritual practices. And because we're all spiritual beings, whether or not we claim to be religious or not, we act out of those highest values. If there is a faith or a religion attached to it, usually those highest values are really, really in line with whatever that religion or faith practice values also. So hopefully that makes sense, and I just wanted to kind of set that as the ground level or foundation so that we can move forward in this discussion. So psychology, as I think y'all are beginning to see, whether it's secular or Christian, psychology is very spiritual, but it's not fleshed out specifically. Okay, what I mean by that is that psychologists, from the beginning of psychology, no matter where you are on this planet or what theory you adhere to most, psychologists recognize individuals to be spiritual beings. They recognize that all individuals have very unique and important spiritual practices that go along with who they stand for. This is how they live out of, okay? So, a psychologist, whether or not they are a Christian or a non-Christian, is going to ask the client to focus on the things that are important to them and bring those into the session. So the goal in that is to bring that spiritual side in and not to necessarily change the client or get them to adhere to your belief system or to renounce their belief system. Our goal as a therapist, whether we say we're a Christian counselor or a non-Christian counselor, our goal is to help the client strengthen the beliefs that they already have, the spiritual practices that they live out of, or to challenge them. Now, challenging is going to look a little bit different. Like I said, our goal is not to challenge them to get them to renounce their faith or to pick up our faith or the things that we find to be important to us. We challenge them in a way that helps them do searching on their own. So we're not going to say, well, that's wrong, but maybe you ask the client the question, well, tell me why you think about this. Well, what would happen if you were wrong? What would happen if there was more to the story or there was more information? So we're helping the client to develop and strengthen their own faith base or their own spiritual practices that are meaningful to them. And that's what a therapist does, whether or not they're Christian or secular. Okay, the differences, though, between Christian and secular, which is where we really spent a lot of time on in our discussion this week, is that Christianity definitely has a preference, as does any faith, as to what spiritual practices look like and what is valued within that faith. Christian values go alongside, obviously biblical values and the things that are important to be growing as a believer. So this would be scripture reading and seeking community and prayer and meditation and being held accountable and all of those sorts of things. So the difference really between Christian interventions and secular psychology interventions is that Christian interventions are going to focus specifically on the Christian faith, okay? But it's not saying that that is the only form of spirituality that can be brought into the counseling session. So hopefully you're kind of tracking with me to go, all right, Christianity under the umbrella of spirituality is just kind of one facet. Now, I do want to clarify, I am not saying that we should renounce our faith or that we should disregard any biblical practices or advice or wise counsel or anything like that in our practice. What I am saying, though, is that it's very, very possible for a counselor to really incorporate that spiritual side of their client in the treatment process without actually bringing in Christian specific principles.